This place kind of, they call it a cathedral for a reason, right? You feel it when you step in the building, and you kind of just know, like all these, these different stories and all these tales of what happens in Central Texas. This place always had like this mystique behind it too. Like I knew they were doing this magic in the back.
I was sitting at the edge of one of the picnic tables one night, just kind of looking at all of these business cards and where are these people coming from? Who are they? What do they do? My God, there are so many people here who've dedicated so much time just to try to have an experience with us that all the hours my dad, my grandfather, and myself have put in here pales in comparison to all the hours everybody who's ever walked through these doors have put in to come and have an experience with us. It's not my place or my father's or my grandfather's, it's theirs. It's their place. We're sort of the caretaker of the day, the captain of the ship. We're here to make sure the doors are open and the ship is functioning well so that people can continue to have those experiences. But as you can see, it's not my grandfather's place and it's not my father's place. I'm the curator and manager of the day, but it truly is their place because without them, none of this would even exist,
Wow.
Yeah, very thankful and appreciative for everyone who's come over the years.
This is not your typical barbecue story. I mean, it might seem like it on the surface. Another story about brisket and beef ribs and making sausage. Another story about a third-generation pitmaster at a legendary Texas barbecue joint defending tradition. This is the story about a man who just might be the most misunderstood man in barbecue. Today, I'm getting schooled at the legendary Louie Mueller BBQ in Taylor, Texas. They're not open yet. Let's head around back, see if we can get in.
This is my church. I'm just sort of a messenger. My role wasn't to really innovate or to establish or do anything like that. I'm just a dude teaching people not only about cooking, but about how it came about and teaching a little bit about the culture of the whys, sharing that so that part of that culture can live on.
Wayne!
Al, how are you, man?
Good, how you doing, buddy?
Great, buddy. Come on in.
All right,
Come on,
thanks.
get out of the cold.
A little bit of history in here, huh?
Man, this place is loaded with history. We moved in here in 1959, and not a whole lot's changed since then. This pit, this was one of the original prototype offsets. They're all steel fabrication today, but the early ones were all masonry with a steel lid. This is no different. We have a large firebox on this end. We got about 18 feet of run, and we got about a 5-foot wide chimney.
Yeah, that's a real smokestack there.
That's a real fireplace smokestack. So you can imagine the volume of air that moves through here. So truly, we're cooking here with convection air. Propane tanks, there is air movement, but nothing like what's going on in here.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's like go-kart Formula One. Right now we've got some beef ribs that are finishing up for today's service. We have briskets that were loaded on maybe hour and a half ago. So they're just now starting their journey.
They're really packed in there.
They're packed in there. This was our very first pit, built in 1946.
Wow.
My grandfather got the steel out of Galveston. We were coming out of a wartime economy. He told me that this was all plate steel from a naval vessel, a retired naval vessel. So this actually spent, 13 years in the alleyway behind my grandfather's grocery store, cooking there before it made its journey here.
Wow.
So it has two
So this
lives.
was originally outside, now it's inside as part of
It was
the
originally in an ocean, and then
Right.
and then it was outside, so it got a reprieve. It got port side, and now it's homebound.
Got a nice comfy home.
Yes.
This is really cool.
Yeah, we use this every day. We make sausage, chicken, spare ribs, things like that in here.
So much history in here.
It's nuts, right?
Feels like history. Dude, this is a thing of beauty.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. It is a beautiful thing.
So this is a really juicy, thick piece of flat we're seeing here, right?
Yep, that's a nice flat.
Wow, look at that. Look at that smoke ring. Pulls easy. Wow, that's a really interesting bark on here. Flavor, spot on. Texture, it's crispier than I would normally expect.
Cooking hot.
All right, should we try a piece of point?
Oh man.
Oh, look at that. Dip it in sauce.
Well,
Isn't that against the law here in Texas?
no, that's a beef dip. It's more
A
like a
beef
jus.
dip.
It's like a jus.
Okay, let me try it.
Think of it more of a hydrating fluid than
Oh, okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's an accent.
That is, okay, I thought there was a little cup of barbecue sauce on the tin. No, that's neat.
Yeah, yeah. That adds a different dimension to things.
It does.
For sure. So this one's the original. As you can tell, there's no jalapeno involved. These cross sections, you'll see some small pieces of jalapeno.
Oh, that's interesting. So jalapeno, but not with cheese.
Correct.
Really? Okay. All right, so let me try.
So give it a whirl.
So this is,
This is an original hot gut. Yeah.
okay.
The reason it's a hot gut is because of the cayenne pepper.
Which is not subtle. That's really got a nice bite to it.
Yeah, it's a little late coming, but it's there.
It is, and it cuts through the fattiness, which is wonderful.
Yeah, the fattiness is.
Wow, so like I've had lots of jalapeno cheese sausages, but the cheese kind of mutes the jalapeno.
I
This
think so.
is really like blossoming jalapeno
Yeah,
in my mouth.
It's really good. I mean,
I've never tasted sausage like that.
yeah.
All right, so is it time?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so how do we approach this?
Well, why don't you just grab a piece and pull it off?
Oh, jeez, look at that. Oh my goodness.
And the longer these rest, the softer they get.
Okay, so I've had beef ribs all over the place. It's my favorite cut of barbecue. This is juicier, but it's not unctuous. It's not that overwhelming fat in your face.
Yeah.
Does it render differently on that pit? Is
Yeah.
that why this is so different?
Yeah, it doesn't stay in suspension quite as well. It's really hot. The muscle just really stretches, you know? It expands a lot. And so you're dumping a lot of the rendered fat that's actually breaking down.
I expected the beef rib to be good. It's your signature. I did not expect this to be so different than any beef rib I've had. And you're gonna teach me how you do this.
Yeah.
We're gonna give the secrets so that
Yeah.
I guess I'd probably need a pit like yours, but that I could try to recreate this.
You know, you don't necessarily need a pit like mine. You just need a pit that you can get temperature up.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult in longer pits, offsets, to get your temperature up that 300 range or
Right.
even a little above. That's a task. I see no
Okay.
reason why this wouldn't work extremely well on a Traeger.
I've got a Traeger too. All right, so you're gonna teach me how to do all of this stuff.
Yes, but it means early rise, grasshopper.
Yeah?
4 a.m.
All right, if I'm gonna learn this stuff, I will get up. I will be here at 4 a.m.
You're hired.
Waxing on,
Waxing off. That's right.
Is there a special
There's a way we do it.
Louie Mueller BBQ trim that's different than?
Yeah, there's a way we do it. And,
Okay.
you know, people have their own methodologies. We have ours.
Okay.
I tend to start on the bottom.
Okay.
What we have here is just an outcropping of that intermuscular fat that separates right through here this top point from the flat.
Right.
This is not what we use in sausage. We'll only use this cover fat on top.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we don't really need this on the bottom.
Right.
All it does, it renders and drops right into the grease pan. So that's just more cleaning and it's a higher fire hazard risk, right?
So just pull that out.
Now, on this side, this is actually a well-shaped brisket right from the start. A whole lot of work needs to be done, but I still need to pound the shit out of it. So,
I'm sorry, you need to
pound the shit out of it. Pound it. Take this, pound the shit out of it.
So the caption of this video is going to be Wayne Mueller beats his meat.
Beats his meat repeatedly. He seems to like it.
So I've never seen this before.
Of course.
So talk to me about this.
Okay, so oftentimes you're going to have brisket, especially this part that comes off of the shoulder. This will play itself up pretty high. You know, they call it a mohawk or whatever, right? So what we try to do, because we have so much air, so everybody talks about aerodynamics, but they don't have enough airflow to really worry about aerodynamics. Any protrusions sticking out just get torched.
Right.
So we really have to shape this well, and we also try to lower the profile.
So you really do take a mallet and beat your briskets
Yeah,
to flatten them out.
yeah.
And so you're not getting airflow over the point that's floating over. You're smoothing it out.
We're smoothing it all out. And it also helps us to develop the shape.
Does anybody else, anybody else beat their meat, or is that just a Louie Mueller barbecue thing?
I think that's something you're going to have to
I can't-
inquire. Inquiring minds are going to want to know. Answer Al. So from here, it's really about rounded corners. Even though this, unfortunately, we can't come across quite so blunt because there's nothing here.
Right, yeah.
I'd like to see, close to an inch. So I like to start on the back. The point, oftentimes you'll see this, it'll be a knob
Right.
that sticks out with a big blob of fat on the end of it.
Right.
I really like all that fat because it really protects this. This one in particular doesn't have it.
Doesn't have the fat sort of.
No, so what I plan to do is I'm going to start removing some of this and try to get a little closer down to where the fat cap is.
So is this going to be waste?
No, this is all going to be sausage.
This is all going to end up in sausage. Okay.
Yes, so it has a home. Oftentimes with guys' hair, they'll pull out a section and cut it,
Right.
A certain length, and they'll use that as a guide to go across, back and forth across. In a
Right.
way, we're doing the same thing here. I want to see how deep down does this cover fat go,
Okay.
so that it gives me a guide to know how far I can trim down.
Okay.
That's the whole reason I do it. So in this sort of situation, there's not a whole lot of fat here.
Just a little bit there, yeah.
Yep, we've got a little protrusion that's happening here. So on this side, I feel good about what I'm seeing here. I'm right up against this muscle.
Right.
The cover fat
point
is
looks-
pretty tight. I mean, I
Right.
didn't have to trim any of that. On this side, again, cover fat, that looks really nice right there. No need to bring this down any further than what it is. As you can see, you can kind of almost see it becomes semi-translucent,
Right.
just so you can start to see each one of those strands of muscle. That tells you got no fat here. It's just membrane,
Right, there's
right?
nothing to do, right.
So there's really nothing to do there. From that perspective, then I'll work on trying to get this side to be similar to that side. So then I'll just bring this back a little bit. And for me, this is about where we are. So air should have no problem flowing around this in any way at all. My grandfather didn't set out to be a barbecue guy. He didn't set out to be a grocer. He set out to be an engineer. He was going to Missouri School of Mines to be an engineer. Went to Montana to work in the copper mines for the summer,
Wow.
like an internship. He met my grandmother in Butte, Montana. They must have really hit it off because she convinced him to leave school and to join Safeway, to become a part of the Safeway organization. So he left. He trained as a store manager, and the first store they assigned to him was Taylor, Texas, which is literally the building right there across the street from us.
Yeah.
That was in 1936, 35, 36.
So did he grow up there in Montana?
No, he actually grew up in Collinsville, Illinois,
Wow.
son of a barber.
Wow.
Yes, and he wanted to get out of his small town, and he wanted to be an engineer, and this was going to be his way out. Instead, his path was diverted off of the engineering path to this
small town.
Yes, but he's an entrepreneur at heart, and he's an independent thinker, and a small red and white regional grocery store literally became available like 150 feet away from Safeway, and he bought it. He goes, I'm going to buy it. So in 1946, he bought his grocery store. It had a fresh meat market, and like every other meat market anywhere in Central Texas, you got a meat counter, you got a pit out back.
Let's talk a little bit about that time, because like you and I understand the whole, if you had a meat market, you had a pit. So I don't know that everybody understands that the butcher and the pitmaster were often the same person, and why.
It was more of a, I think it started, or it was rooted in cultural experience. So many of these Central Europeans had a very Prussian mindset when they came over. And so just like the Mexicans who were already here, you didn't throw anything away. You didn't waste anything. You used up every single thing you could, right? And in business, especially if you have a small business and a meat market, one of the best ways to do this was, if something's getting long in the meat counter, on the grill it goes, and on the menu it goes for today. We're grinding to a chili grind. It makes it easier to mix on a larger grind like that. And then when we come back through and do the second grind, it'll be the grind for the stuff. And we'll use a 3/8 inch diameter hole.
So we're
on the
doing
plate.
2 grinds, and we're actually changing the die.
Yes,
when we do
for the
it.
second.
Okay.
So we'll step down one size. So we'll still have a coarse stuffing, but not too coarse. But it's not going to be like an emulsified, hot dog or something.
You're not like measuring the fat and the meat separately now, because this is all still attached. So this is the natural ratio of whatever fat was.
Yeah, so where I was going with that is we'll consciously remove that portion of fat, which
Right.
will take out maybe of the total fat content, 5, 8, 10%
Right.
of the total fat content. So our breakout comes in probably around 75, 25. Rarely does it get to 70, 30.
Okay.
Though, I mean, with the Texas barbecue sort of exportation of it, I really saw it happening in multiple phases. Once brisket went out, and I really believed we could make beef ribs next, and I think that happened. And then the next logical element out would be sausage, that people would try to differentiate themselves with. But I think people found it to be incredibly difficult. Bill was one of the few people who really stuck with it and made it his craft, and has become the industry expert of sorts,
Right.
from an independent standpoint, because he's probably the most experimental guy there is out there, doing just about whatever.
No, he's our age, but he's doing some very new school things.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Tom Mickelwake was doing some stuff for a while too, but I think at the end of the day, Sausage Sensei takes the day.
Yeah.
All right, so the big issue, the big privacy issue in Texas barbecue is the rub, right? Everybody claims to just do the Dalmatian, the salt and pepper.
Right.
And we've found out over time that's just bullshit.
Right.
People have their own special magic they throw in there.
So you're going to show us what special magic you throw in yours.
Yeah, our special magic is 2 ingredients: 16 mesh coarse black pepper and fine iodized table salt. There's no Lowry's in here. There's nothing else other than black kernel pepper and iodized white salt. We have what's called the Louie 9-1, right? Which is 9 parts pepper, 1 part salt. But that's all by volume, not by weight.
Okay, so by weight, we're just one side or the other, 50-50.
Yeah, which is pretty much the split most people, you'll find most people will use. Brisket is a little less salt than the beef ribs.
That's it. Dalmatian,
That's it.
the cap goes on.
That's it.
And now we're gonna go season the briskets for service. Like this
For
is-
service, yes.
This, you're not faking it.
No, this is
For
it.
me.
No, this goes there, goes in a bowl. I agitate it on the brisket, on the beef ribs. There it goes, out the door.
Okay, here's a technique I haven't seen before. We're gonna season the table first. Water as your binder.
Yep.
So is there logic behind using the towel versus a spritz bottle or anything else? Just, is that how Louie did it?
Speed and efficiency.
Yeah, so we're just gonna give it as much as it'll hold.
Yes, and then we'll shake off the excess.
Right.
Right.
And straight onto the smoker.
Straight on the smoker, with the point facing the fire.
Beautiful. Kind of dig in this hole, just put it out on the table and go method.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing we found with rub our briskets too far in advance, with the fine iodized salt, this table salt.
Yeah.
Too much of it is dissolved,
Right.
right, and absorbed,
Yeah.
and so it loses magic, you know. So we're trying to keep it from being too far absorbed,
Yeah.
and allow it to sit in the bark, and not just get soaked up into all the meat.
So question for you. I
Yes.
see some overlap going on with the briskets.
Yes, we're doing some overlap because, one, it gives me, it's about room compression, trying to fit 16 into that space, into that 8.5 foot space.
Okay.
That's one thing. The second thing is it helps us to protect the flats a bit. The hot air can just obliterate all of this stuff. So having an overlap here actually can help our cause a bit.
And then as they shrink down, as they cook, they make their own room.
Exactly.
Okay.
By 49, my grandfather had said, okay, this can be a standalone business. It became Louie Mueller BBQ in 1949. He retained the grocery store because that was still his occupation.
Okay.
This was sort of the tangential business that came out of it that seemed to have some legs. So my grandfather, he loved being here because he was literally just a half a block away from his grocery store, so he could check on everything multiple times throughout the day. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you think your grandfather knew that he was creating
No.
a legacy?
No. I talked to him about that because by the time the early 90s rolled around and my grandfather was still alive, it was, by the late 70s, there was a couple of articles in the New York Times, and, Dallas Morning News was picking up more and more articles as time went on. So we started seeing more people coming from outside of the area just to come here. And my grandfather had some notion that something was different here than other places, but he didn't create it with that intention in mind. And he told me as much. He was like, look, we had enough business to support this in this building. At least, people come sit down and not be in the rain like they were over there. It's not that much further of a walk. So honestly, we're still servicing the same people. So no, this is basically, it was an economic decision. It was, what is going to be the best for our clientele.
All right, this looks like a familiar process.
It's familiar.
And we're doing both sides of the beef ribs.
Yes.
The bone and membrane side.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm always trying to, with beef ribs, face them all the same direction. When they start to pull in, when they start to, the muscle starts to contract, it takes on more of a triangular shape, right? The beefiest rib with the highest portion of the cap is always the last part to break down. So having them all in the same direction, not only do we shift them around, moving them back and forward, but we'll spin them around.
Oh, you will?
Also,
Okay.
so that we can get an even distribution of heat all the way around them, because this is really hot up front here. I
Right.
mean, this is about 325, 3 to 340, whereas back there it's only like 220.
Hey, did you guys hear during the tasting when Wayne said I didn't need to have a smoker like his, that I could actually probably do it on a Traeger? Well, what Wayne didn't know is that Traeger is actually a friend of the channel. So when I got home, I told him about it. I said, hey, I want to try to recreate these Louie Mueller beef ribs on the Traeger Timberline that I've got at home. And they said, that's great, but you know what? The timing is even better than that because you don't have to do it on the Timberline. We got a brand new grill coming out that we can send you. So Traeger's done it again. So they came out with a new line of grills called the Woodridge. It comes in the Woodridge Pro, and the Woodridge Elite that's gonna be shipping towards the end of March, early April. And guess what? These are entry-level grills, but just only in price. See, when you look at the capabilities of these grills, they took all the latest technology from the free flow fire pot, the same fire pot that's on that Timberline that I use, to the grease and ash keg that makes it super easy to clean. You don't even need a vacuum to clean the things out, to actually some new stuff that I don't have on the Timberline that frankly I'd like to have. Like they actually put hooks on the front and back, so when you're cleaning, you got a place to hang those grates and you're not sticking them all over the ground. So they've thought of everything, and they've made these things so that they're super affordable. So if you're one of those folks that's still cooking on a gas grill or a kettle or something that's not getting you the flavor that you want, and you want to learn how to smoke but still do amazing quality food, the Woodridge actually provides some good alternatives. So the base Woodridge comes in at less than 800 bucks. So that's a perfect entry point to learn what you're doing and to figure out what smoking is all about and how it all works. Then for just a couple $100 more, you move up to this one, the Woodridge Pro, which adds a couple of really important features like a pellet sensor, so you know when you're gonna run out of pellets, and Traeger's super smoke mode, which I think is super important. So if you can afford the extra couple $100 and spend $9.99, I think the Woodridge Pro is a fantastic buy. And if you want to go even higher, the Woodridge Elite, which is going to be shipping in a couple of months, actually adds an insulated cook chamber and an infrared side burner. So if you don't want to use the chamber to sear and you want to have an actual burner to do searing on your steaks when you do your reverse seared steaks and stuff, you actually have that, and doors for a cabinet so you can store stuff inside. And that one's going to come in at like $15.99. So all super affordable, and I think these are gonna give the more expensive grills, not just from Traeger, but from lots of their competitors, a run for their money, because you just don't see these kinds of features at that price point very often. So I am going to be doing my beef rib cook on this, and I'll publish it on my other channel, so make sure you stay tuned for that and you see how it turns out. So in the meantime, grilling season is starting, so go check this thing out on Traeger.com. You're gonna be able to see all the details about the Woodridge, and they're in the retailers now, so stop into your favorite Traeger retailer and bring one home in time for grill season. Just boom out onto the table, just like that. Huh?
Just like that.
All right.
So here, we're gonna help the mixing process by creating as much surface area as possible. That way, when we apply the rub or the ingredients,
Right.
We can already have a distribution that's touching a high percentage of the meat.
Makes sense. So it's
So-
already better than doing it in a bus tub.
Yes, I try to avoid any clumps. I try to break them apart. Anything that's packed together is not going to have any seasoning inside of that. Right. So keeping it as, we call it, as fluffy as possible, where it can kind of just hit and roll. So here we just have some basic ingredients. We have some cayenne pepper, some black pepper, some salt, and then our preservative that's sodium benzoate base. And now it's like feeding chickens.
This is kind of genius, this whole spread it out. I've never seen anybody do this, but it makes perfect sense. You're already giving yourself a great head start.
My father would always tell me, well, are you finished? I'm like, how do I know? He said, do you think you're finished? Well, I've been mixing for a while. Well, then mix for 10 more minutes. He says, whenever you think you're done, add another 10 minutes, probably because you need it. And I have to say, he was pretty dead on about that.
Yeah.
We'll add some ice, and that'll help us distribute a bit more as well. So as the ice melts, sort of leaches around.
So the ice distributes spices as well.
It does, but it also helps to keep this cold. But more
Right.
than anything, it's a lubricant to help push this fat when it gets sticky and tacky, helps push it through the horn. A good indicator for me is I look for, is there any fat that looks untainted by the cayenne pepper? If I find any, it's like, oh, I need to mix that area in a bit more. It's a pretty good indicator because you're not going to really see it on the muscle mass.
And this is 1 day's sausage production.
This is 1 day's production for 2 days service.
For 2 days service, okay.
Yes, and this will be, that's for jalapeno.
Good.
And this is for original. We use a pickled jalapeno instead of dried.
Right.
It provides its own set of challenges. There's a lot of moisture in here, and binding can sometimes be an issue if you can't shake out and squeeze out a lot of the moisture. One more obligatory mix, and then we'll be good to let them set for a little bit. And then we'll be ready to stuff and twist them.
When your father took over, did he get it? Did he know what he was taking the reins of in '74, or was it still just
no.
this is the family business?
This is the family business. It's a small family, you know. I think he was just hoping to support a family. My dad, he was ready. He was like 35. He was working for his father in the grocery store when he was 8. Then I get to work for him when I'm 8. That's how things went in small towns.
That's right.
You didn't have to be on a farm to put in those crazy sort of, say, business support hours as well as your home chores, right? Shortly after he took over, my father he didn't like heights, and the health department told him the walls are kind of flaky. You're going to need to scrape these and repaint them. He didn't want to do it, but it's the health department. So he goes, okay, you have a new assignment. He goes, you're going to start over on that wall right there this Sunday. You're going to start scraping that wall, and you're going to have to scrape all these walls, and then we're going to repaint it. And I'm just like, but I'm 8, I mean, what are you talking about? You can see there's a scraped section on the wall. It's probably about 4 feet wide, and I don't know, maybe about 14 feet high. Mm-hmm. That's as far I got. That was the efforts of my first Sunday's work. And my dad said he caught so much hell come Monday because the old timers coming in were like, what are you doing? What are you changing? You can't do that. You can't do that. That's not for you to do. And somebody made a call to somebody because Dad said, I don't know. They came and told me, never mind. I don't have to paint it. So you don't have to paint it. You don't have to scrape it. It's your lucky day, kid. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because that would have been brutal. All of the rest of the aesthetic, besides not painting the walls, I truly credit him for retaining, because I think the loss of these tables and chairs are older than 59 when we moved in, and just allowing history to just continue to march forward unabated, and to my father's credit, he wasn't really the marketer. My grandfather was the marketer. So when he took over, it was all about, I'm just working on locking down the process in such a way that it is absolutely repeatable, exactly the same way every single day. And so he just worked on the consistency of the simplicity. All credit goes to him. I think of my father and grandfather as really two parts of a Broadway play. I think my grandfather was like the producer. He backed it, it's his name, it's in the marquee, but my father was more of the director and the main actor. He was the one that really breathed life and soul into the food, into what this became. But this place wouldn't be here without both of their specific skills doing their thing at their time, right? To make it even possible for me to take over when I did. What wasn't widely known, and it's becoming more known, I think now, is my father is my stepfather. He and my mother married just before I was 2. And he has always treated me as if I was one of his own kids in every way possible. That doesn't always happen in those kind of situations, I felt really blessed. He gave me a chance at life. He didn't scar me, or, I didn't have trauma-related, PTSD because of it. He was really a good dude, even though he was always had to play the hard ass and the disciplinarian. And because he was so, introverted, he never said much of anything. So you just thought he was pissed off all the time, And he wasn't. But you don't know that as a kid. But all I know is he taught me so much about responsibility, accountability, work ethic, how to be a man, all of those things that, you could miss. And in today's world, it's very easy to miss those things. So for me, I owe an immense debt of gratitude to him, as far as I see it. So after my 25-year walkabout and doing with the thing that I wanted to do and telling people that I was going to work in professional sports, they were all like, yeah, whatever, dude. A minor league baseball team, they hired me. Yeah, and by the time season started, I was the director of operations, and by the fall, I was assistant general manager of the team. That first team I was ever associated with, I thought it was so cool. I got a baseball card of me. It was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And since we won the championship, I got a ring. I got a championship ring, and I was just like so stoked. It was the gaudiest thing ever, As it turns out, after leaving minor league baseball, I went and worked for the Houston Rockets organization and the Houston Comets, and I brought home 3 more championship rings with the Houston Comets. Our brisket rotation is very technical. Everything shifts and moves the same way each time. In a very similar way, brisket and fire are the 2 opposing forces that are meeting. So we don't want to keep them there for long. They'll exhaust, they'll burn, they'll overcook. So we pulse everything. We'll give them anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes on this front line. After that, we move them all the way to the back. In this movement, they're also moving away from the walls, into the centers, away from the walls. But they kind of do it at a sideways, cross-sectional way. We do this because there's no heat that gets along these side walls, and we need to expose those sides of the brisket that were up against the wall to the center where most of the heat is being running through the system. So that happens primarily up until we wrap. So I'm moving our front row off and spinning them 180 degrees. I'm also moving the locations, shifting everything over. This is all just about heat distribution, So now we're taking the grind that we let set get a little colder. So we use a natural hog casing. This is a 32-35. Now I'll preload the throat.
Right.
Just so I can start to get some rhythm. I'm really going to be pressing with one hand and sort of my left hand acting as a governor as this runs off.
So it is interesting that you're grinding and stuffing as one step.
Yeah.
This is different than what I've seen before. Is
Sure.
Right off of there.
Yes. I mean, we would grind again if we were hand mixing and then go into a hydraulic press.
Right.
But
This is more efficient.
It's efficient, but it doesn't always stuff as well as you'd like.
I notice you're not even looking at your left hand. You just have developed a feel over the years.
Yeah.
How it's going over there.
Yeah, you can feel when it slows down and when the casing begins to sag.
Right.
That it's underfilling. So if you'll notice, I don't twist every link.
I was noticing that.
Yeah, I alternate every other
you
link.
don't have to, right?
If I alternate and skip over,
perfect sense.
Now the twist runs without untwisting. It's a tough thing to hear that a sibling of yours could do some really horrible things to your parents. It's probably even worse listening to your parents talk about how that trust has been betrayed. When my father called and asked me for help, it was kind of like, things must really be bad, because, for him to actually reach out to his kids to go to war with another one of his children, things have to be bad. So literally, my wife at that time and I went to her and was like, this is the situation, And we had only bought a house a couple of years before that in Houston. We mortgaged our house, we scrapped together every penny we had, and we gave it to my father. And so at that time, I already knew that one way or another I was going to be involved. I just didn't know the depth of the involvement at that time.
Yeah.
But I was then back, most every weekend. I was in Houston at the time. I came back often, every week to help out until they finally reestablished, were able to hire a couple of people and kind of stabilize things a bit. And then I just sort of backed off and just told Dad, when you're ready to retire, you tell me what you want to do, because I'm giving this back to you. This is yours, it's not mine. He gave me a call in 06 and he said, I think I'm ready. Would you come home? Would you come home? We sat at that table right there and just kind of hashed it all out. And, because I could tell for the first time, he really had something that he felt was worth protecting and continuing, All right, so this is end of phase 1 of this process with beef ribs.
Phase 1?
Phase 1, yeah, so we're paring these off so that we have a shorter cook tomorrow morning. Instead of having a full 7-8 hour cook, we have a 3.5 4 hour cook.
Oh, so we're going to cook them again?
Yes, so
Okay.
These are just looking pretty right now.
They are looking very pretty right now.
But they're still really tight.
Okay.
And so they really need to be broken down for a few more hours. So I'll pull these, we'll cool them down. They'll go in the walk-in here shortly. We'll pull them back out first thing in the morning while I'm getting everything else loaded in. Then we'll load these on and we'll finish them off. They'll be done 9 o'clock, 8:30, something like that.
Okay, perfect. So we
Okay.
just pull them and
Yeah,
refrigerate now.
So
Okay.
right now, that's all I'm doing. I'm just pulling them,
Great.
setting them out, letting them cool. I'll put a sheet over them, but they're gonna go on the cooling rack for about an hour. Otherwise, we build up too much humidity and heat into the walk-in, and it just plays havoc keeping things cool
Right.
in there. I mean, it adds a ton of heat in there, especially these bones just absorb so much. When I did wind up taking over in 08, I mean, Dad had just won his James Beard in 06. So, a lot happened between 01 and 06 in our family. And my father was really strapped about, saving this business. And he was carrying a pretty heavy load. A big part of the reason I came back is because, okay, I knew you as a father and a provider and a disciplinarian. Now I want to know you as a guy, right? I want to know you as a peer, an adult. And that was a wonderful thing to have that time with him. My appreciation for all of this, when I said I would never do this, all of it stems from the fact that this is what I see I'm trying to do is hold on to the culture that he represented, the processes that he fine-tuned, the products that he ultimately developed, and to do it in a way that he and my grandfather would be proud, right? I honestly, and it's not been the easiest thing. The many hours my father and I were here at 2 o'clock in the morning at that prep table, making sausage, trimming meat, doing what we were doing, talking, me asking him questions. My mission in coming back, I wasted no time. I said, I want to get to know the man. I have these questions. I want to know these answers. There's so much that I want to probe here. And I want to do this. And then at some point, I want to sit down with him with a camera and then actually have these conversations so that we can record this for some form of posterity, right? We didn't get to that point because he passed away too soon. But we did have all of those conversations and everything I've ever wanted to ask him, everything I've really ever wanted to say to him. I had an opportunity to do it. And to his credit, he was candid and frank about a lot of things where I'm just like, wait a minute. I distinctly remember how I got punished for doing that very same thing. And you're telling me you skated for this sort of stuff? No, that's bullshit. And I learned so much about him. the questions that I wanted to know were satiated. And I have no doubt in my mind that he knew exactly how I felt about him, and I had no doubt about how he felt about me. Those things were all stated clearly to each other. And so when he passed, people talk about, oh, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. I wish I would have said this, or I wish we could have talked about that. I didn't have that problem, because I spent 18 months doing that very thing with him. And he probably got tired of me asking the questions, to be honest with you, but
I don't know. You and I are both dads. Would you get sick of your dad
Oh, hell
asking
no.
those questions? Yeah.
my father, he wanted to be cremated. He didn't want to have a funeral service because he was afraid nobody would show up. We had a memorial service. There were so many people there. They were not only filled the main chamber and the vestibule and back, but then there was 100+ people standing outside, just listening on the speakers outside the entrance. And then they all came here, and there was probably 600 or 700 people packed into this place. I'm not kidding you. It took me 30 minutes to walk from there to there, just trying to maneuver through people and stopping along the way, just, hey, how's it going? What can I get you? Oh, you know, it was the most incredible outpouring. And you know, I gave his eulogy, and it was really weird because I didn't know what I was gonna say up there. A guy that graduated with my brother, his phone starts ringing right as I'm about to talk. And I'm like, thank you, Dad. Because I'm like, and I called him out, I'm like, John, don't worry about it. Dad would have said, just take the call. When you're done, we'll continue. So just let me know when you're done. So people started laughing, and then it was like, oh, okay, well, let me just share with you what my father meant to me and who he was. Okay, let's see if any of our boys are ready. So we'll go by temp and size. The larger briskets, we're pulling at around 170. Okay. The little ones, we'll pull maybe about 165, 168. So Austin's gonna pull this bad boy out. We're using 2 sheets. We've got 18-inch butcher paper. He's overlapping them so we can get a fold on either side on both the flat and the point.
Silly question.
Yeah?
Everybody else I've seen with butcher paper is using the peach butcher paper. Is there something different about this?
It's white.
That's it. Other than that, it's the same thing?
It's the same
Okay.
fucking thing.
All right.
Yes. We've been using white forever. We wrap it up really tight because what's going to happen here is through the rendering, it's still going to drop a cup or so of rendered fat. We want to capture all of that and not have it just drop out. So by tucking it in, just like you would, a nurse,
Right.
a nurse tucking in your hospital bed, it does the same sort of thing. It'll hold in all of that rendered fat so that when we move it to rest, it'll absorb it all back in as it cools down, relaxes, and then can absorb that back.
So there's actually some science to this.
Yeah, for sure. So these were the beauties we made up yesterday.
Right?
We got a oak dowel, otherwise known as a broom handle.
Is that really where they come from?
That's where these came from. So we're providing them a little air space. So up here we have some angle iron,
Okay.
where we just slide it onto. Just like we have to do briskets, move them around, shuffle them around, we have to do that with sausage too.
Okay, so we're going to be moving these dowels
Just
during
once.
the cook. Okay.
So it cooks warmer on this side to the front. So we have to shift everything over, under, and around.
That's interesting.
The 08 issue of Texas Monthly comes out. It's a massive hit. Snows is the first #1. We're on the cover, and things are just nutsoid around here. By the time 13 comes around and Aaron Franklin is crowned the new #1, I was well aware we're not catching that mechanical rabbit. He's got too much inertia behind him, both regional, not just local, but regional, national, some international. His brisket is untouchable by anybody else at this point in time. So regardless of how good I think our brisket is, it's not gonna make waves in the wake of that. So what we have to do is we have to come up with our cut that is equally as good or better, and equally is representative of Texas. So it has to be big, it has to be bold, it has to be beef. There's only about one thing that I could think of at the time that we could make our stamp with, and that was beef ribs. Now, we were using chuck ribs at the time. We were using those 130s instead of the 123As, right? I decided, screw that, because you're only getting 2 decent bones out of that chuck rib anyway. So let's just bite the bullet, go pay the extra $1.25 a pound or whatever it was at the time. We're gonna go for a single muscle slab, and we're gonna go for big. We're going big. And not only that, we're gonna market it big, because everything's bigger in Texas. And if we wanna really make an impression, then it has to be on all fronts. It can't just be the way it tastes. It also has to be the way it looks, and it has to have some image like John Wayne on a stick, that kind of shit, right? So I'm like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this a shareable entree item. It's not gonna be just one bone of 3 out of a rack of 3. No. It's gonna be one bone of 2 out of a rack of 2. So we took out the middle bone, and we still do today. And we make it for sharing. It's meant for sharing, as all barbecue is, right? It turned out to be just this consummate sort of, this is an embodiment of what Texas barbecue can be. Not only is it big and bulky and beefy, but it's got giant ass bones to go with it, right? You can get as messy and sloppy with it as you want. I made a pact at the time I decided this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make our own thing that's gonna be as big or bigger, and if possible, it's going to be the best barbecue dish in the world. By 2015, we received recognition for the best barbecue dish in the world and the tastiest dish in the world for those beef ribs. So I think saying that, pushing that, and truly seeing that vision, because we were known for brisket and sausage. It was going outside of who we were to do that. I thought that was kind of risky.
All right, so here's our beef ribs from yesterday. So what's the plan now?
Now we're just gonna put these back on, and we're gonna finish these off to service.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got 8 racks. These we're gonna load in on the back end. They've already had a lot of heat. We're gonna try to slow that finish down a little bit. They'll still rotate forward and back, side to side, round and round. We'll just keep them off of that 325 to the 340. We'll hang them mostly around the 300. So I'm feeling for overall flexibility.
Okay.
There needs to be a little firmity because this thing is resting overnight.
Right.
But it needs to be firm, pillowy around, especially that I can imprint in the flat.
So is this one ready?
This one's ready.
Oh, I can feel it. Okay.
You feel how you can come up into
I
it?
can come up into it. I can feel the fibers separating between my fingers.
Yes.
Okay.
And
so
that's
this
going
one's
through paper.
ready to go.
So this one's ready to go.
To
And
rest overnight.
Yeah, this will rest overnight, and this one will come out about 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. Oh, I may be one of the most misunderstood people that I know. Seriously. I mean, all of my very closest friends, even to today. Yet, I am still highly misunderstood in that group. But it doesn't matter because they accept me fully for who I am, even though they don't understand half the shit I say. But they love me anyway. So it's like that unconditional sort of engagement, right, is irreplaceable. As far as the rest of the barbecue community goes, there's nobody who knows me. The closest person who would know me is probably Sheldon Mason.
Wayne's probably one of the most kind people I've ever known. I think if he could give you the shirt off his back, he would. That being said, it depends on who that person is. I think he would just about help generally anybody, but people that are in his circle, it's a very small circle of people.
I have enough people attacking me from every direction. You know, all I'm gonna do is add fuel to this fire just by responding. So it's best for me just to keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah, you feel like the world's against you. And at the same time, you're still trying to make the best product you can. You're still out in the world trying to, you know, somehow keep your father from being forgotten. Okay, so we're gonna check these little beauties out. You can see it's pliable.
Right.
It's got nice sponginess. We're gonna wrap these up. Bundle these up and let them rest.
Okay, so we're wrapping the cellophane in paper now.
Yep, we went from cellophane this time to capture the rest of whatever might render out because of the bones heat, and whatever water vapor might come out because, again, that same heat. And then we're gonna try to keep in the radiant heat by wrapping them in an insulator.
Okay, so
A
the
pulp.
paper is for temperature, the plastic is for moisture. Makes total sense.
Yeah. So now these guys, now that they're all happy and bundled together, they're gonna come with me and they're gonna rest also in a cabinet, but it's in a passive transport, just an insulated cabinet.
All right, so now they come out?
Yep. So
Okay.
now we're gonna pull them and we'll box them up.
Got a nice uniform color on them.
Yep. Yeah, they do. These we're gonna let cool. And then we'll put them back on around 10 in their boxes so they can be ready for service.
Oh, so they'll sit in the boxes
And then they'll come back in here.
and
at
you just
10.
put the whole box right back in the smoker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just staying true to what you promised to do, staying true to what I promised my father I would do, really helps sort of put all of the rest of that aside.
Even today, that's your guiding light.
Yeah, I talk to Dad all the time. It's another reason I can't imagine leaving this place, you know, because most of my memories of my father are in here. He is all over the place in here, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, this is my church. He is my communion. When I'm here, I don't need to be remembered. I didn't do anything, you know? But my father, my grandfather, yeah, I would really, it'd be a star in my hat, I think, a feather in my hat if they never were forgotten. Continue to hold their place in our lore, in our culture. They earned it.